Well, how are we doing, Beatstar players? This is iRosaFile5 here, and welcome back to another Beatstar tier list. Today, let's look back at the Standard and Deluxe Extreme tier lists from April 2025. I've officially done my Extreme tier list for Standard and Deluxe last year, and 4 months have passed, and now it's actually time we actually take a look at the Extremes that came after the tier lists have been released. And a lot of things definitely have changed over the past month, so let's actually take a look to see which Extremes moved up or down, or which new Extremes landed the tier list. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. So for those who are new to this channel, here's how the rules go for these kind of tier lists. For this one, I'll be including all Extreme songs, and the scale will be between 1 star being the easiest and 6 star being the hardest. The tier list will be based upon the following things, which will be clearing and DPing status, and of course overall pattern difficulty and skill set. Arrows will be indicating to saying whether a song's moving up or down a tier, and of course the 0.5 will be indicating whether a song's actually in the middle of both two tiers. And for this specific video, alternate extremes will be included in a standard tier list. The reason why they won't be in a separate tier list as opposed to the ones in this hard tier list from last month is because that they're actually more limited and far between the hards this time, so they'll be included in the standards. So anyway, with all that babbling, let's get into it. Presenting the standard extreme tier list for Beatstar April 2025. Yeah, no build-up this time, because since I released the original tier list a few months ago, the build-up felt a little bit unnecessary. But let's take a look what changed since the last few months we take a look. The 1 star here actually gained a new extreme here called Flight of the Bumblebee, which is a high 1 star, and I can definitely see why. The pattern here is way easy for something like an extreme here, similar to the drill here, and the speed is actually really fast, which can trip out some players, but honestly, when you take that away, it looks like a 4 star hard in disguise. Now keep in mind, some players are mixed on this one in terms of difficulty, because sometimes the speed can be a little bit warranted, but there's a giant perfect plus bar, which does give it a little bit of a more of a DPing advantage for unlike something like Machine of Vibes. But for the sake of players actually feeling a little mix between 1 and 2, I'm going to leave it at a high 1. We also have Remember Me actually staying here as just a regular 1.5. It was close to moving out to a 2, but more players are getting more adapted to it, so basically it's staying at a 1 star for now. The 2 star actually gained quite a few extremes in the last few months we've been looking at. Firstly, we have some new ones like Hot Shot, which is definitely a high 2 star. Depending on if you're really tolerant of the swipes or unexpected patterns, you're going to have a little bit of a rough time trying to figure out this one. But honestly, when you get down to it, it's pretty simplistic. And here's where we actually get to the alternate extremes. For the 4 alternate extremes we actually take a look at back in my videos of each ranking of the alternate seasons, all of them do land in the 2 star territory. We have Sweet Home Alabama and Enter Sandman basically being high 2s because having a pretty tricky pattern, whether the solos or actually a lot of the stacking, it definitely does show really good difficulty between the alternate versions. But when you get down to it and compare it to other rock extremes that rank higher like Tornado Souls, it's not that difficult. But what isn't as difficult of those two is Down with the Sickness Alternate Extreme. This one deserves a low 2 because while it does have a pretty simplistic pattern for those who DP the standard and even the deluxe, I feel like this one's trying to capitalize free DP for those who actually did it and actually trying to give the same pattern with instrumentals and, you know, the same 5-note burst. But I will say it does deserve a 2 star for those who are actually unexperienced with those kind of stuff, so we're going to take a few time to get used to it. And we also have the last one, Anaconda Extreme, landing at a 2.5. In my original video, I called this one a 2 star extreme, but more players were more mixed on the category thinking that's a 3 star. And looking back at the pattern again, I can definitely understand why, because when you get down to it, there's a lot of patterns going for it, and it does have a big perfect plus bar as well here. But what made this into the 2.5 here is that if you really understand the pattern perfectly and play the deluxe, it shouldn't be that harder than anything else. Now to the 3 stars. The 3 stars barely got any improvement this time, but we got 2 new extremes here in this tier. First, we have a Sag Boogie being a slightly harder version of I Know a Little, with the gallows being in towards the list here, and a few more guitar riffs here actually giving it a slight edge over I Know a Little. That being said, it's in a low 3 star because it's kind of varying between players. For me, I do understand why some do think it's easier than a 3, but I do understand why some people think it deserves a high 3 star. We also got Ronda a la Turca, another classical extreme here, landing at a 3 star. What's funny is that some players are pretty confused why this one's a 3 star amongst some other ones on the tier 2 stars. But when you really play stage 4 in the final stage, it does a pretty subtle difficulty spike, but not as much as another extreme later on this list. It definitely shows that you really need to be concentrating and actually understanding how to actually do the timing correctly. No new changes happen in the 3 stars for other extremes here, except for therapy that's landing itself into a low 3. I feel like more players are getting more understanding of the concentration method and actually trying to master a bit more therapy. Likewise, the 4 stars barely got any change, but only one new extreme in this tier, Under the Weeping Moon. If you're like me, you can definitely say this is another slumber in this case. I do think the song is slightly better than this, but the chart here is kinda weird to me. I did mention in my worst extremes video here that it's pretty inconsistent by stage 4, and it does leave a better difficulty spike when you're coming down to it. It's a low 4 though, because while the ending is actually pretty repetitive, the rest of it makes up in terms of untimed difficulty. And as for the rest of the 4 stars, nothing much really changed here. Moving on to the 5 stars here, we have Italian Concerto, the first classical extreme being at a 5 star. I feel like this is more of a breath of fresh air. After a lot of 2 stars that's been given for the first 3 months of the game, I feel like this was actually very necessary to give us a really difficult extreme again, and it's only tap base only, no swipes and no hold, which give it a long tire advantage over some other 3 and 4 star extremes, and it's definitely harder than something that some people would think than something like Plasma or We Live Forever. And the 5s here are basically unchanged, and a 6 star is unchanged as well. I doubt anything's going to be very more difficult than Be Careful Without a Fool at this point, so yeah, still a 6 star, but it's way off the margin, so I don't think anything's close to topping it. So that does it for the standard extreme tier list of April 2025. Basically, only a few changes happened this time here, with most of the 2 stars being in for the newer extremes, a few 3s, and 1 4 and a 5. It's more scattered based on difficulty and more understanding if Beatstar want to make any harder extremes here. If they do decide to make more alternate extremes, and let's be real, they will, try to do something a little bit more harder. They're definitely on the right track for some, but none of them really land as much to be remembered than some others. And of course, the updated Deluxe Extreme tier list for April 2025. Unlike the standard Extreme tier list, very little has actually changed for the Deluxe Extreme tier list. We actually got 3 new Deluxe Extremes for the past 4 months, but unfortunately, one of them has been deleted. The deleted one, unfortunately, was 7 Days Deluxe. Now, this one was actually very loved by the community for a long time. While being a very easy Deluxe Extreme, it was definitely loved for a lot of introductory players, and I definitely see a lot of players saying that this was their first Extreme DP. According to the developers, they did say it was a licensing issue why they had to remove it, but this was very unfair to a lot of players. I really did like playing this Extreme over here, and it's a really big shame that this actually has to come to rest, but you know, the game is just gonna be the game, you know? Anyway, let's get back to the new extremes here. First we have is You Say Wah Deluxe here, which actually lands at a 1 star extreme. It's very strange too, because you think for Deluxe as hard as tough as the one in the 6 star leaf for the standard hard, you expect it to be at least a 2 or 3 star, but unfortunately, when you play the chart and when you compare it to the other 2 stars on the list, it is actually a high 1. I will say the ending's a little tough here. It does actually give me a little flashes to Hysteria Deluxe, but honestly, when you play the rest of it, it's basically copy from the original. Still a decent chart nonetheless, but not one I remember mostly. I will say one extra change did happen to the song already on the list. Walk Deluxe actually moved down to a 2 star extreme, which actually is for the best. If you really get down to it, the first half feels like a 4 star Deluxe extreme, and the rest just feels like a really good moderate extreme, but altogether really just boils down to a 2 star extreme for Walk Deluxe. For the second new extreme, we have Sandstorm Deluxe, a very repetitive, well, as expected, Deluxe extreme. Obviously, this is going to be the same difficulty as the standard, although a little bit harder since the spams are definitely longer, and it definitely takes a little bit less breaks here, except for stage 4, where it has the firework burst, which kind of ruins the flow if you're actually doing more of the spams. But I put out a high 3 because some people think it's actually more tiring than the standard. Make if you will, but it definitely is not going to crack the 5 star, that's for sure. And thirdly, we have No One Knows Deluxe. I was surprisingly happy with this one. When you think this one was going to be the bane of many people's existence, this turned out to be one of the better Extreme Deluxes from one of the OG Extremes. This one actually has a better grip on how to actually chart percussion. The guitar solo with the micros is actually easier to do here, and the timing and pacing here is much better than the standard here. So with that saying, it's going to the 4 star extreme here, because honestly, it's not that hard when you really get the practice down, and it's much easier to score than a standard. And of course, rest of the whole entire list remains the same, so that does it for the Deluxe Extreme tier list for April 2025. A lot of did stay the same basically, and you know, I'm pretty sure like a lot of these things are going to be moving up and down as well here. I do think something like Bizarre Love Triangle can move down, and something like Catch 2022 can move up for some people, but I think this list perfectly symbolizes all the ups and downs of the Deluxe Extremes. I don't think much will change, but let's see what the future holds. I really hope we get more Deluxe Extremes because it feels very, very boring right now that Beatstar is not doing much Deluxes anymore. And as always, we reached the end of the video. Special thanks again go to Ben Madsen and Dan, the inspiration for making these tier lists. I really liked looking at the newer standard and Deluxe Extremes here. While they're not as good as some of what we got, maybe mainly in the seasons 21 to 30, they definitely do have a lot of good things to talk about here. I actually do see that Beatstar is kind of going a step in the right direction with season 49 and season 54 actually giving us 2 standard extremes as opposed to 1. But I think the downside here will be that maybe in season 55 as well, with season 50, is that we're going to get 1 less extreme per season. I really hope Beatstar keeps experimenting with the whole entire ordeal with the extremes here and give us Deluxe Extremes again. If they absolutely have to give like more Deluxe Extremes like they did with season 53 with the Dear Maria Count Me in Deluxe, they can add 1 more Deluxe Extreme and that would be really appreciated. And of course, another special thanks to the Beatstar Discord community and the Beatstar Handbook for reminding me which extremes are which. We're very deep into this game and I really hope the extremes can keep this game up and running again. But as always, thank you all so much for watching this video that took so long to refurnish, and with that, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.